Make sure to subscribe and turn on the notifications so you can be alerted when new content is released. Enjoy the video.
And a level of awareness and a level of self-honesty that we can actually do every single day without having crisis or trauma. We can do it because we're excited to be alive. And the beauty behind all of this is when you're truly in a creative state, when you're truly creating, my definition of creation is when you forget about you. You're so involved with what you're doing. You're so present in the moment. Whether you're in a meditation or whether you're hiking in nature, whether you're filming, whether you're writing, whatever you're cooking, it doesn't matter. When you're truly in a state of creation, you're so involved and so present in that moment that you literally lose track of time and space. You forget about your problems. You forget about time. You forget about your body. You forget about your pain. You forget about your identity. You become so involved with what you're doing that your brain changes to the point where your identity, your personality is vacated for a few moments. And that's where energy moves from those survival emotional centers in the body right up to the heart.
Yes.
And the moment it moves to the heart, you start to feel inspired.
Because it looks like in that space then the brain is not as present or needed, but it's the heart that takes over and it is guidance and it comes to us. I mean, that's
what I call the natural state of being. Now, we live in two states of mind. We either live in a state of survival or we live in a state of creation, or what we would call, those lower emotions of stress and those elevated emotions of joy and love. So if you think about this, 90% of people on the planet, for the most part, 90% of the time, live by the emotions of stress. And every time you have a reaction to something in your life that you consider threatening or that you're uncertain about, it's no different than when a gazelle is being chased by a lion in the Serengeti. When the gazelle sees the lion, it turns on its fight or flight nervous system and it mobilizes all of this energy for an emergency. And when the body mobilizes all of this energy, the brain and the body get a rush of energy, and those chemicals are highly addictive. Now, those emotions of stress that are created are the exact emotions of aggression and anger and hatred and judgment and fear and anxiety and pain and suffering and hopelessness and powerlessness. And 90% of the time people are living in those emotional states. And those emotional states endorse the ego to become very selfish, very self-involved, very self-indulgent, very self-centered, very self-important, full of self-pity. It's all about the self, because when the gazelle is being chased by the lion, she's only concerned about three things: my body, the environment, and time. So when the gazelle is being chased, it says, I have to take care of my body. My body's a priority. Where in my environment am I going to run, and how much time do I have to get there? So when those emotions of stress are running and the gazelle is over-focused or obsessed about its body, the environment, and time, it's no longer concerned about long-term building projects. It's not concerned about growth and repair and creation and nurturing. It's got to deal with an emergency situation. Now, those chemicals of stress, without a doubt, the scientific fact, begin to break the body down when it's done long-term. Every organism in nature is designed for short-term stress. But when we keep turning on that stress response and we can't turn it off, now we're headed for disease. So the problem with human beings is because we can make thought more real than anything else, we can turn on the stress response just by thought alone. We can begin to think about our problems, some future worst-case scenario, and we can focus on it with the exclusion of everything else, that the brain begins to signal the body to produce the same chemicals as if the body was in that experience. And the body, as the unconscious mind, does not know the difference between the actual event that's happening in reality and the emotion we're fabricating by thought alone. We can unfold a past bitter memory that's tattooed in the recesses of our gray matter, and like moments it comes to life. And to us it's real. And when we begin to feel those emotions that are connected to the past experience, the body believes it's in the past experience again. And so people begin to condition the body to either live in the past or live in the future, and they miss the moment. Now, in that state where you're in love with life or in love with your creation, or you're exuberant because you're involved in something. Remember, the number one ingredient is you have to be absolutely present. And when you're present and you're guided by none of those survival emotions, all of those hormonal centers that are running in the lower part of the body, the adrenal glands and all those centers, there's no energy there anymore. The personality who's thinking and feeling in the same cycle is gone. You're not thinking about that, and all of a sudden energy begins to move right into your heart. This is not a metaphysical thing. This is a scientific, physiological phenomenon. And as energy begins to move into your heart, you become less analytical. You become less judgmental, because it's almost impossible to analyze and judge when you're in a state of love, when you're in a state of joy, when you're in a state of inspiration. And that natural state of being, that creative state, is when the body is liberated from the chains of those very strong emotions. And so the person then in a state of creation is nobody, is no thing, is no time. And the moment we move into that elegant space, the body is jubilant, it's released, and we feel connected to something greater. We feel like we're connected to the source. When we're living in a state of survival, we feel separate, we feel disconnected. We are an animal that's only concerned about the self. The opposite state is a selfless state. You are no longer connected to an ego. The ego is out of the way. And that's what we call the natural state of being. So most people, though, they get to a point of change, and that means they have to lay down the known and step into the unknown. And to step into the unknown, genetically and historically, means that you're stepping into a place that's highly threatening. But if you understand that you have a part in your creation, the unknown then becomes an adventure. It becomes something exciting, and that's when the body begins to reorganize itself.
That's exciting. Are you seeing that there's a lot of people talk about the changes, and that our DNA is upgrading, and that a lot of things, new energies, new frequencies, is all of that part of our transformation? I mean, are we really truly evolving as human beings to be able to reach faster, maybe that place? And because it is really going to be a matter of survival soon.
Well, I think there's a strong intellectual division going on right now. I think every single paradigm right now in this particular time in history is collapsing. Whether it's the political model or the economic model, whether it's the religious model, whether it's the environment, whether it's the medical model, the educational model, all the systems are breaking down because basically it hasn't been working well up until this point. Now, some people will cling to the familiar. They'll cling to what they think works. And those people that hang on to that are going to be the people that are going to try to do the same thing and expect a different result. Now, I'm saying that with the caveat that if we begin to embrace a new model or a new way of doing things, when we begin to demonstrate greatness, when we begin to demonstrate peace, you can't shake hands with your neighbor in church and say, peace be with you, then get in your car and cut everybody off on the way out. That's, mind doing one thing and body doing another thing. We have to, at this point in history, demonstrate our highest ideal. And when we begin to be the change in a certain way, and we begin to modify our behaviors to have new experiences, the genes then begin to get signaled, and we begin to upscale our genetics and our brain's hardware. Now, we're turning genes on and off every single moment. You and I are turning genes on right now. If you're learning something and I'm learning something, or we're engaged in the conversation, we have a whole host of activity going on genetically that's beginning to reorganize who we are. Problem is, we know that the environment turns on the genes. But for someone who's living in the same reality over and over again and doing the same things and thinking the same thoughts and embracing the same emotions, then there's no genetics that are actually going to be changed. So your personality creates your personal reality. It's that simple. And your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. So if you want to create a new personal reality, you're going to have to change one of those three things. And when you do, your brain and body have to change to walk into a new reality. It has to have some change to prepare it ahead of the actual experience. And that's when we begin to look at changing the brain and body by meditation before the environment changes. So then when we change something inside of us, in the way we think and feel, and it produces some effect outside of us. Now we'll pay attention to what we did inside of us and we'll do it again. The old model is wait for the environment to signal the gene or change our internal chemistry. When we notice something that's outside of us changes how we feel inside of us, we'll pay attention to whoever caused it and we'll begin to associate that memory. And that's a slow path in evolution, millions of years to adapt to different environmental conditions. Because of the size of the human brain and the forebrain, and because we can make thought more real than anything else, we can begin to fabricate emotions of joy and love and inspiration and gratitude, to such a degree that the body, as the unconscious mind, is beginning to believe that that future reality is already happening. And now we're signaling new genes in new ways, and the body is prepared for a whole new reality. As a matter of fact, the brain and body look like that reality also has already happened. Now we're on a whole new experience of life.
But it seems with all the information that is being shared right now on through the internet, thanks to the internet too, and wonderful DVDs or teleclass that you're doing, that more and more people are exposed to this information and are expecting an amazing shift, are feeling the energy increases, the frequency being higher, and therefore we are experiencing incredible fast healing, miracles, joyful moments, bliss, more and more frequently.
No, I absolutely agree. I think that's the opposite side of the first division. I talk to people who can tune into that and know that this is an age where there's a whole lot of energetic things happening galactically.
Right? That's what I wanted to hear you.
Oh, absolutely. Galactically, there's absolute, changes that's going on in our universe, in our galaxy. From the sun emitting its photonic emissions. There are alignments happening. Without a doubt, this is a time you and I chose to be here. And it's a rebirth, it's a renaissance, a true renaissance this time. But all of that energy is going to endorse who you're being. It is a raw material, but you have to take it and you have to use it in a way that's going to support you. So if you're living in stress, and you're living in survival, and you're living in hate, and if you're living in judgment, that energy is going to endorse who you're being. It's going to amplify it for you. If you begin to realize that that's a raw material to drive you to your greatest potential, and you begin to decide what's no longer fits in your life, in your world, in your body, in your brain, in your being, and you begin to remove those layers, those masks of those emotions that block the flow of that intelligence that's giving you life right now, that invisible force, that's that spiritual intelligence that's indigenous to all human beings. It's blocked because of the emotions that we wear layer by layer. And as you begin to remove those layers and that intelligence begins to leak out, and you begin to create more coherence in that elevated emotions of joy and love, that energy that's happening in this universe, in this galaxy, with the planets, with alignments, and with photonic emissions, is going to be an acceleration to your greatness. So I just look at it as a energetic time where you're going to have to change your energy. I mean, you're going to have to change your energy to meet that energy. And so the limited emotions that drive us to a lower denominator, to a lower level, that's a very real thing, but it's going to be more amplified.